I'm Alexis Nichols, staff writer at Under the Hard Hat, and I am talking today with Neil Shah, the CEO and president of the Construction Financial Management Association, also known as the CFMA. We're going to have a great chat. How are you doing today, Neil?
Great, Alexis. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. What were you going to talk about before we started recording?
Well, we were chatting a little bit backstage about the our how we got into construction,
Mhm.
and I'm an aerospace engineer by education, and always thought I'd work in with airplanes and airlines, and people end up in real estate and construction by accident. They either are in the family business, or I think. What we're trying to do as
Mhm.
CFMA and working with other organizations in construction is to make it a destination of choice for young people coming into the profession, coming
Yes.
into the working world, that this is a career, whether you're coming at it from a trades perspective or a professional perspective, as our members are accountants typically or financial managers, that this is a place that you want to be. And this
Yeah.
is a place that's growing, and it's ultimately a great place to build a career.
Yeah, we know there's a tremendous labor shortage, particularly in construction and the skilled trades. So how we can jump around. I'm not I don't have to go in a linear fashion at all, but what are some of the things that the CFMA does then to integrate or recruit or put the word out that construction is a great place to be?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alexis, and a large part of what we try to focus on. Where as you introduced, the Construction Financial Management Association, been around since 1981, so we're going to soon celebrate our 45th anniversary.
Congratulations.
7,000 members from across the construction ecosystem. Our members, general members, are typically accounting professionals, CFOs, controllers at construction firms, heavy construction, residential, GCs, specialty trade. And then we have associate members that make up the span of all of the enabling infrastructure for a construction firm, their bank, their insurance company,
Hmm.
their CPA firm, their technology providers, their equipment providers. So it's that whole ecosystem coming together in one umbrella. And we feel we're unique in CFMA, that the only place in the world that the intersection of financial management and accounting and construction come together.
Hmm.
So it's hard enough, as you said, getting people into construction, the skilled trades. It's even harder to get them to work in the office, right? So
Yeah.
ultimately, what we're trying to do is to grow that pie. Know that construction is a significant economic driver, both in the U.S. And globally, and because of that growing pie, that there's opportunity, whether you're coming at it from a skilled trades perspective or you're coming at it as
Hmm.
somebody that wants to be the CFO at a construction firm. We're working with other organizations to try to really define what it means to have a career in construction or a career in the built environment.
Hmm.
And getting to students early is one of the ways to do that, and really promoting the fact that construction isn't just remodeling a kitchen. It's where we live, work, and play. It's about building infrastructure. It's about creating capacity for the economy to function. And I think reframing that whole notion of being in this profession, being in this industry, will make it more attractive for the next generation, and have them with a designed intent want to be here. Again, college isn't for everybody.
Hmm.
So if you're going to go into skilled trades, let people know early that that's an opportunity to have a good career. If
Yeah.
you're interested in college and you want to be a financial manager or you want to be in technology, there's opportunities in construction to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, like you said, you're not just building brick and mortar infrastructure. You're contributing towards building community, citizenship, creating places for people to live and function.
Yeah, live, work, and play. All right.
Yeah, work and play. Exactly.
It's interesting. I was in Spokane, Washington earlier part of this week for our Pacific Northwest Regional. And CFMA does a lot of engagement activity, both locally, regionally, and at the national level. We're
Hmm.
mainly US. We've got some Canadian presence. But the construction that was going on in that market, you wouldn't necessarily think construction and think Eastern Washington, but they're building condominiums along the river. They've redone, what they call their podium and indoor track and field and athletic facilities. They've got a cultural arts center from across the way from the hotel where they do lots of shows. And they don't have Broadway like we may in New York, but ultimately they've got the ability to create community. And a market like Spokane, although albeit relatively small, maybe 500,000 people, has Gonzaga University, has a whole multitude of different higher ed and educational opportunities. It's involved in lots of different transportation and industrial type stuff. So it's quite interesting to go around the country and see that construction really does help create communities.
It really does. What are in your experience and the organization's experience, what are some of the maybe unique challenges in recruiting or changing that narrative for
I think having a narrative is important. I think one of my colleagues said that we have an image problem, right? Even real estate, right? The gentleman that said that actually works with international investors in real estate, and you think about global capital flows and having a German investment pension fund invest in an office building in Austin. It really forges the notion that we are truly a huge global economy relative to those capital flows. So making it attractive in terms of understanding what you're creating, understanding the impact that you have on the economy, and then bringing it local, because inherently construction and real estate are inherently local businesses. So you're giving back to your community by helping create some of that infrastructure,
percent.
whether it's a school, a hospital, a bridge, an office
Hmm.
building.
Yeah, I worked with a gentleman not too long ago. I was writing for him, and he was the president of Reimagine America's Schools, and I think one of their main offices was out of Spokane. Spokane. We talked at length about how schools in particular were community hubs and not just places for education, but places for social work, daycare, childcare, and they really are central to the community. So it's it's good to hear you say um, and acknowledge that you're creating those ecosystems. How do you think? I mean, you have a background in, I believe, aerospace, real estate, like you said, astrophysics. Did I say that? Maybe I did.
Yeah, so I worked in the aviation business. So
Aviation. Hmm.
as an aerospace engineer, I worked for an aircraft engine company for about 10 years. So very formative years of my career coming right
Right.
out of college.
Yeah.
From there, I went to a real estate services firm that was part of an equipment breakdown insurance company. So went from managing a fleet of aircraft to a portfolio of buildings and never kind of went back. So really, when you think about engineering as a profession, people understand it. They may not understand where it's applied.
Yeah.
An aerospace engineer could work for a Boeing or a Pratt and Whitney, but they could work for NASCAR. They could
Right.
work
And
for
there's so many kinds of engineering. I mean,
right,
I
exactly.
did, which
So
I didn't know.
I think really being able to define all the different skills and roles that are involved in the built environment, I think, is critically important. And so we're trying to work with other organizations to make that very clear.
How do you think that? How do you think that that combined background of yours um, kind of positions you to take the helm at the CFMA?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think inherently engineers are about solving problems, right? So if in coming up with practical applications to solving problems and hopefully commercializing them, right? If you're in the whether you're not for profit like CFMA is, or if you're a publicly traded company, you're trying to create value for your stakeholders. So you need to be able to monetize it. I think my background as an engineer, albeit I've been in a lot of customer facing and relationship management, business development roles. It's all about looking at an opportunity and potentially a
Yeah.
problem and creating an opportunity from it.
On a more granular level, what are some of the main pillars of the CFMA?
Over the years, we've been one of the few places where you can get construction finance specific education. So that intersection of finance and accounting and construction comes together at CFMA. And typically, whether you're a young person starting off at a CPA firm that does work with construction firms, or you're in the construction firm working for a contractor, you're getting your foundational knowledge from CFMA. So unique concepts in accounting, like work in progress, percentage of completion, retainage, cash management, things that are critical to making sure that your firm is healthy, robust, and growing. So that's one of the pillars. Is education is a cornerstone of what we do. We have one of the most engaged memberships on the planet. And I think people love, whether it's online or in person, engaging with their colleagues. So that notion of building community across the construction ecosystem, whether we are doing it at in-person chapter events, whether we're doing it online engagement events or webinars, or we're doing it through regional or national conferences, those are two pillars that we've been very strong on, and we're going to continue to invest in to help drive the construction industry. The third component, which I think is increasingly important, not only for attracting the next generation, but to really get construction financial professionals recognized for the impact that they have on the rest of the industry. A CFO at a contractor doesn't just do their books, right? They're not just doing balance sheet and income statement. They're typically involved in risk management. They're typically involved in capitalizing on their balance sheet to get bonding capacity. They're responsible for working with the bank to get working capital lending. They typically have IT responsibilities and implement the ERP system. They're increasingly involved in equipment and ensuring that that equipment is optimized. So HR may fall under their remit in certain middle market contractors. So we want the industry to recognize that decisions that a CFO at a contractor is making has an impact on that firm,
Yes.
which in turn has an impact on the industry.
Hmm. That's really interesting. What would you say, in terms of financial organization, what would you say, how would you kind of describe the construction industry? Is there silos? Kind of are there top-down challenges? Are there communication issues?
It's a fragmented industry. There's 750,000, give or take 100,000 either way, construction firms in the United States alone. That's not counting globally. So they are typically players that are either general contractors or
Mhm.
specialty trade. They either work on commercial, non-residential, or residential or heavy construction. Really, for us as an organization, being able to understand how to help the professional who may think that they're on their own, when there's an entire network, probably 200,000 people that are doing construction financial work across the US, that they could be part of that growing community, and that they could have a peer group, and they can have benchmarks, and they can share best practice and get education from their peers. I think increasingly that's an important part of what we do, and being able to amplify their voice in the industry.
Yeah, like an intra community. That's very interesting. I've forgotten my question. That's okay.
There's some
Um,
there's some other macro issues, Alexis, that,
right, right.
that go beyond that. You know, it's hard enough getting talent to come into construction.
Yes,
It's even harder, as I said, to get them in the back room. It's hard. The women in construction are growing, but it's still
yes.
not a diverse
Yeah,
industry. It's a small fraction, both in the field, increasingly less so in the back office. But then suicide prevention and mental health issues are prevalent within construction. If you look at safety, you mentioned that earlier. Maybe 1,000 people die from safety-related accidents in the U.S. At construction sites. About 5,000
still,
people die from suicide in the construction industry. We as an industry lose 5 times as many people due to suicide as we do to accidents, safety related accidents. So it's incumbent upon us not only to attract the best and the brightest, that's a diverse and inclusive workforce for the future, but one that we take care of once they get here, because it's not just simply physical health that matters. And obviously that physical health issues lead to other addiction type related issues, but mental health issues have to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I didn't know coming into this role that construction has one of the highest suicide rates of any industry. That was shocking to me.
We're probably
Um,
number two to only something like mining.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Um,
And
Yeah,
to that end,
sorry.
Alexis,
Yes.
what we've done, and this is a credit to not only the folks that are the founding fathers of CFMA and ultimately evolved over time, but the industry at large has come together to form the Construction Industry Alliance of Suicide for Suicide Prevention. And there's probably 40 some odd organizations, and many of our chapters have champions locally and have signed up to a pledge to really drive awareness and stop the
Yeah.
stigma. But just creating that awareness, having the conversation, knowing that it's such an important issue, I think has really enabled us to bring that forward. And it's something that CFMA is proud to have been a part of its formation and continue to
Mhm.
support it. September is Suicide Prevention Month as well. So as you think about construction and really helping take care of the people that are here, we're trying to do a whole host of things in September as well as throughout the year to do that.
You have a connect on LinkedIn, Ian Gray. I had the pleasure of speaking with him at length about safety issues in construction, suicide prevention, mental health issues. It's rampant and it absolutely needs addressing. I know you mentioned that you have a very large membership. So what has been the response to the CFMA as a whole?
I think it was formed because you did have accounting and financial management organizations and you had construction organizations,
Right.
but there was nothing specific to educate people that are at that intersection. So, as I said before, we probably have we have 11,000 members, but probably only scratching the surface of what's possible out there in the world. So, really creating awareness for what we do and how we bring communities together is critically important. As great as happy as I am for the growth that we've had, I think on the flip side, there's so much more upside in terms of creating that awareness and making people outside of our bubble
Mhm.
understand what it is that CFMA can do for them.
That's a great point. What's next for the CFMA? You can give as much detail as you're comfortable giving, but what's next for you and what kind of inroads are you going to make in the
So
future?
I said before we're going to be 45 years old in 2026. So the 50th anniversary is not that far. 5 years down the road, we are embarking on a strategic planning process now, and we'll be kind of driving that for the next 5 years to our 50th anniversary. We think we can continue to grow our membership. I wouldn't put a number on it, but we've been growing by almost 1,000 individuals on a net basis every year. So if we can get to 20,000 by the time we're 50, I think that would be wonderful. We have phenomenal relationships with other organizations. So really addressing the big ticket items like suicide prevention, like bringing more people into this profession, like tackling the technology challenges, especially with the advent of AI, and helping people learn how to really work within those frameworks. I think is going to be critically important. We have a data product called a financial benchmarker, which we believe can be the standard for construction firms. The benchmarker measures the financial performance of an organization and allows them to compare on an anonymous basis against peer groups that are firms that may be of the same size, in the same geography, in the same segment of construction. And it allows them to determine whether or not their ratios and whether or not their financial performance is comparable or best practice relative to those other organizations. We do a heavy equipment comparator, which allows them to optimize and do the same for their equipment performance. I think if we start to look at staffing and technology and other aspects of what good looks like in construction, this benchmarker, the CFMA benchmarker, becomes the industry standard for organizations. So we think there's tremendous opportunity in working with other organizations for education and driving the big thought leadership issues. And we think that the data component of what we have is something that could become the standard within the construction industry.
Absolutely. streamlining workflows and processes and efficiencies and all of those things. What if someone wanted to kind of make inroads into finance in construction? I know you said that people are a little hesitant to do it. What steps could they take? What would be the process?
Well, I
What would you
mean,
suggest?
you can. We have 90 some odd chapters across the U.S. in
Mhm.
almost every major and secondary and tertiary market. You know, go to a CFMA event locally. Meet the people that are doing the work. I think our members are very happy to talk about what they do. They're very, as I said, the most engaged membership on the planet.
Mhm.
Very willing and open to welcoming people into their local groups. And if you join CFMA and join a local chapter, you'll get exposure to the kind of thought leadership and education that's available, but also the community that you can be a part of and the peer groups that you can form that allow you to understand what it means to be in this profession.
It's fantastic. Neil, is there anything else you want our listeners slash readers to know?
Well, I mean, I could go on, Alexis, for a long time, and I don't want to monopolize that time. The one thing I
No.
did mention is, not only are we focusing on maybe driving more of CFMA into the construction industry and using, data as a way to differentiate what good looks like on a company level, on an individual level, we've got a certification called the CCIFP, Certified Construction Industry Financial Professional, and that is what good looks like on an individual basis. So you are assessed against our body of knowledge, you test against it, you're required to do continuing education against it, you sign up for a code of conduct and ethics, but it's a distinction like no other for construction industry financial professionals. And so for us, what good looks like at the firm level, what good looks like at the individual level, and getting that recognition in the marketplace are going to be critically important parts of where we take this journey.
In terms of environmental social governance, how would you say that the CFMA is making it not just an issue, but a robust issue?
I think we're doing parts of it, not necessarily in its entirety. There are aspects. I think real estate is driven from really top down. I think you used the phrase top down. So the investment community really affects the change that happens in real estate. If I look at sustainability, for example, and healthier buildings and greener buildings, more sustainable buildings, it was the tenant and the owner of the building that ultimately drove property managers, developers, construction firms to incorporate that into their assets. And I think now it's not something that sits out there, but it's inherent in the way that you evaluate and value actually the asset and the property. I think when it comes to and that's the E in the ESG that you talked about. When it comes to the social aspects, encouraging young professionals from all walks of life to choose
Mhm.
this as a career, as opposed to going to work for Goldman Sachs or Google. No offense to them, but everybody wants to go and get rich quick. Um, Making that an intentional journey is something that I think would enhance the social aspect of what construction does by making this career in this industry welcoming to everyone. And in terms of governance, contractors are bound by quite a few regulations, and a lot of it depends on the locality, the state, and it differs from place to place. There's a whole network of complexity around the compliance issues that they need to deal with, and from a governance perspective, that sometimes can be overbearing. So,
Mhm.
making it easier for uh, especially middle market contractors, which is the predominance of the market, to be able to deal with that as an organization, I think would be an
Yeah.
imperative for us.
It's a lot. When you think about it, it's a heavy task. We talk a lot on our site about, that triple bottom line. It's not just about financials, it's about community and social responsibility and environmental responsibility. So that's no small feat. And it's good to know that there are organizations like the CFMA to pull up their boots and get to work. I have really enjoyed our conversation. Um,
Uh,
this is Alexis Nichols with Under the Hard Hat, staff writer with Neil Shah. It's been an absolute pleasure, Neil, and I hope our paths cross again.
Absolutely, Alexis. Thanks again for having me.
You're very welcome. Talk soon. Bye.